Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Today I have an absolute stinker of a case. Quite literally actually. Quite literally, now that I really think about it. We are covering the case of Robert Pickton, also known as the murdering pig farmer, also known as Stinky Piggy. We've got another nickname in the house, people. Stinky Piggy is what he would get called. And also just, you know, in general, scumbag. Robert Pickton, he would one day inherit his family pig farm, and he would use this for some questionable activities and then some downright horrific evil activities. It was later discovered that Robert Pickton was not just murdering loads of young women on his property, but once he had murdered them, he was grinding them up, putting them into mince and selling them to the public. And anything that he felt wasn't fit to be sold to the public, he was grinding up and feeding to his pigs. This case is disgusting, it's brutal, and he is just an absolute evil monster. I cannot even begin to explain. Before we jump into the case, please make sure you are subscribed, notification bell on, because I upload every single Wednesday and Sunday, 7:30 British Standard Time, and I will be throwing in, randomly, sprinkled out, some surprises for you. I will be uploading the occasional additional case, and I'll only be able to do it every so often until I one day do this as a career, which hopefully will be soon with the help of you guys, which is why it's important that you subscribe, like, comment, share, engage with the video in some way. That would mean the world to me. But yeah, I will have some surprise content sprinkled throughout. But I don't want to ramble too much because I ramble so much in the beginning of my videos. Everything that you need to know is down in the description below, but without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the case of Robert Pickton, aka Stinky Piggy. So Robert Pickton, he was born on October the 24th of 1949, and I can't tell you how much it angers me when people are born in October because it's my favourite month, Halloween vibes, love it. But he was born to Leonard Francis Pickton and also Louise Helene Arno, and they were a family of pig farmers, and that's going to be so important in this case. And I really wish it wasn't. Honestly, watch me stutter because this farm was 17 miles east of Vancouver in Port Coquitlam? Help. Anyway, that's in British Columbia. Honestly, if you want to get a bit drunk on this fine Sunday evening, just take a shot every time I pronounce something wrong because you will be drunk. So Robert, he had an older sister by the name of Linda, and he also had a younger brother by the name of David. Now, Robert and David, they always had to work on the farm. They worked alongside their parents on the pig farm, and it was some really demanding work for young children to be doing. Now, Linda, she got off lucky because apparently the farm was no place for a young lady. It was not an appropriate setting or space for a young lady, and honestly, that would be so fine by me. If they said that to me, I would totally get it. This ain't my space. I am gonna go. Linda was sent to live with relatives in Vancouver, and Robert and David, they set off to work. Now listen, granted, Robert's childhood was not the easiest, right? His mother was known to be very demanding, she was very patronising, and she prioritised the pigs more than she prioritised her sons. Pig farming was her life. Pigs were her life, and she would prioritise these pigs so much, giving them all the attention, and even prioritise them more than her son's own hygiene. These boys, they stunk. They stunk, right? It was bad, really bad. So she would force them to work really long hours, even if it was a school day, after school, straight to the farm, work until early hours next morning, get up, go to school, cycle repeats, you know? And by the time they would finish their shift, it was too late, or they were too tired to even think about bathing or showering. Apparently, their mum, she would only allow them to bathe twice, and I think that meant twice a week. hopefully not twice a month. But she was very strict on it, and they were not allowed to shower. Now, because they were never allowed to shower, Robert grew up with like a fear of showers. I don't know what that phobia is called, right, but I'm sure it exists. He was scared to shower as he got older. He would only take baths. Now, Louise, she would send her children off to school. So David and Robert, they were sent off to school in dirty, smelly, unwashed clothes. Like, their peers and their teachers said that they smelled like manure, they smelled like dead animals, they smelled like dirt. They just stunk. Now, of course, children, they're cruel. Children are some of the most honest yet cruelest people you will ever meet, okay? And like, I like children, don't get me wrong, but some of them are mean. And the school bullies, they just had an absolute field day with this, and they started to refer to Robert and David as Stinky Piggy. That was their nickname. Now listen, I'm happy that we have a nickname to go off of, because this nickname seemed to stick with Robert, little Stinky Piggy. Another funny nickname for the list, guys. I know you're all as excited as me. Now, to add insult to injury on the stank front, Robert, he would also hide in dead pig carcasses when he was trying to avoid someone. Like, his mum shouting like, time for homework, and he's like, oh, time to jump in the pig carcass. And like, low-key, wish his name was Marcus, because then we could call him like wee carcass Marcus, but Stinky Piggy will suffice. Now, despite all of Louise's demands and, you know, how she treated her sons in general, Robert was very attached to Louise. Like, he absolutely loved and adored her. And it was actually said that it was really rare for Robert to interact with his dad. Apparently his dad was very abusive, both physically and emotionally towards Robert. So he rarely interacted with his dad. It was all about his mum. He's a mummy's boy. Robert, he wound up failing grade 2 of school, and when he failed grade 2, he was put in like a special class because he was a bit of a slow learner, and unfortunately for him, school would just never be an area that he would thrive in. I must say, this bit made me feel so sad for Robert. Don't worry, it doesn't last long, but like when he was 12 years old, he had like started to raise a calf. And this little calf became like his pet, like his everything. You know what it's like when you're a child, or my God, even as an adult, like your pets are your world. Like my cats are my babies and they mean everything to me. And this was the same for this little calf. So Robert goes to school one day and he comes home, and the first thing he wants to do is go and see his pet, as we all do. First thing I do when I get in the house, I look for my cats. And even if they don't want a hug, they're getting one. So he goes off, he's looking for his pet. He says to his mum, like, you know, can't find the calf. Where's my pet went? And she's not too sure. So she says, well, why don't you go check in the barn? So Robert walks out to the barn and he sees his pet calf slaughtered. And this completely devastated him, and it is believed that it was his father that had slaughtered his pet calf, which I think it just speaks volumes. Like, I know it's a farm and, you know, they do whatever they do, but that must have been so horrific to see something that you loved and cared about so much lying there slaughtered. So Pickton, he would drop out of school in 1963 and he would go on to work as a meat cutter. And he would do this for 7 years. But before we get too far ahead in the story, I do want to just tell a story regarding his brother David, which, you know, had quite an effect on Robert. So on October the 16th of 1967, David, he was driving in his father's red truck. Like, he had not long passed his driving test, so he's out cruising about as we all do when we pass our test, unless you're me, who was terrified to drive for like a month after I passed my test, but it's not about me. Now, there's not a whole lot of detail about like what exactly happened or what caused this to happen, but David would slam the red truck into a 14-year-old boy who was walking alongside the road by the name of Tim Barrett. Now at this point, David, he completely freaks out. In panic, he speeds home. Once he's home, he tells his mum what's happened, like he's hit this 14-year-old boy, doesn't know like if he's alive or dead, and his mother goes back to the scene of the crime, basically. So his mother checks on Tim, and she can see that although he's injured, he's still alive. Now at this point, I was thinking like, okay, so like they'll get Tim help. No. What Louise decides to do is push Tim, you know, his body that is hanging on for dear life, she pushes him into like a slough at the side of the road. Now, if you're not sure what that is, because I wasn't sure, if you are sure, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to briefly explain. It's like a swamp / shallow lake type thing that would lead to like a larger body of water. Once she pushes Tim into the slough, both her and David, they take off and head home. The next day, Tim's body is of course found, and an autopsy would later reveal that the injuries from the collision would not have been enough to kill Tim, and his cause of death was drowning. He drowned in this like shallow, swampy lake that Louise had pushed him into. What the hell? Like, you see this little boy there who is hanging on for dear life and who we now know would have survived if you had got him help, but you decide to push his body into a shallow lake and allow him to drown. Now, what is, you know, apparently monumental about this whole thing is the fact that Louise had such a strong influence and hold over Robert, and he believed that whatever she did was right. So, you know, killing is right, apparently. But I'm not blaming what Robert does on Louise, because believe me, he acted of his own accord. So in 1978 and 1979, Louise and Leonard would both pass away, which meant that the sons, they inherited this farm and they would become millionaires because they sold parts of this farm for 5.16 million Canadian dollars. So, you know, they're kind of like rolling in it, like, show me the money. Now, a worker by the name of Bill Hiscox, he had said that the farm was pretty creepy looking. You know, it didn't give off good vibes. And when talking about Robert, he had said that he was a pretty quiet guy. He was really hard to strike up a conversation with, and he would also act very bizarrely, which would grab the attention of many. So in 1996, the Pickton brothers, they would open what they claimed was a non-profit, like, charity organisation, and they called this the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. Yeah, like, terrible name. Now, these supposed, you know, charity events were not in fact charity events. Believe it or not, these events were actually raves. Illegal raves. Yes. The brothers, they would hold these illegal raves in their slaughterhouse, which they had actually converted into like a little warehouse thing. But I bet that still reeked of blood, guts and everything else. Now, these raves, they were very well known throughout all the locals, and they would accumulate a guest list of up to 2,000 people per rave. And they were making a lot of money. A lot of money. The people who would attend these raves would be, you know, just basic locals. There would be biker gangs, and there would also be sex workers. Because back is my baby butt. Hi, darling. Say hi, guys. Hello. Oh, he's tired. Now, on the 23rd of March of 1997, Robert Pickton, he would be charged with attempted murder of a woman by the name of Wendy Lynn Eistetter. Wendy had been at the farm with Robert Pickton, and they got into some sort of like fight or altercation, and he proceeded to handcuff her and stab her multiple times. Now, luckily, Wendy was able to escape and she was able to run away and get help and also, you know, say the man who did this to her. Now, she had actually been able to get the knife from Robert and stab him. He then had to seek medical treatment at Eagle Ridge Hospital, and then he would be arrested. And the story should end here, but it doesn't. We're not even close. Also, Buddy in the back, let's try and ignore him. Now, I couldn't believe this, but at the very same time, I could believe it because this is the kind of crap that happens all the time. For this attempted murder, he was released on a 2,000 Canadian dollar bond, and then the attempted murder charge was stayed, so completely halted. Now, this would be halted on January the 27th of 1998, and the reason that they had decided to halt this whole charge was because Wendy was an addict, and they believed that just because this poor woman was an addict, that she was unreliable and mentally unstable and was probably just making the whole thing up. How do you explain then her multiple stab wounds? Explain that to me. Because addiction doesn't cause lacerations to appear unless there's something I don't know about. Now, do we remember David? You know, his brother, you know, the joint raver brother. Well, he was absolutely by no means an angel, as we already know from, you know, the car incident. And he would also commit some crimes. Now, apparently he didn't know about everything that went on at the farm, but he had his own little thing that he would do. David was convicted of sexual assault back in 1992, but would you believe me if I told you that yet again nothing happened? He was given a fine of 1,000 Canadian dollars and then also 30 days probation. So, lesson not learned. Why are we not punishing these people more? Now, the victim in this case had said that David attacked her in his trailer back at the pig farm, but luckily for her, she was able to escape. Attempted murder. Like, are we not charging with attempted murder anymore? I don't know. Now, over the years, the brothers, they were known to the police. There was a lot of legal altercations going on with them. They had already been sued for zoning ordinances and neglecting the agriculture in which it had been zoned. They were also sued for altering the farm, so like turning it into like a warehouse, like rave situation. Police weren't happy with that. And then, of course, on top of those charges, we also have their multiple assault charges. Now, despite all of the sort of legal pressures that they were facing, they decided, YOLO, we're going to have a New Year's Eve party. After this New Year's Eve party, they were faced with an injunction which banned any and all future events. They couldn't host anything. This would authorise the police to arrest and remove anyone that would attend these events in the future. The following year, the society's, non-profit status was actually removed from them because they had no evidence of any financial statements. And let's be honest, if there's any money going into that charity, it's not going to charity. It's going to them. Over the next 3 years, the worker on the farm, Bill Hiscox, well, he started to get a very, very bad, dreadful, horrific feeling where he just thought that something really sinister was going on at the farm. Like, he thought there was problems a lot bigger than the illegal raves and the parties, and there absolutely was. His instincts would be correct. So Bill, he had started to notice that a lot of the women who were, coming and going on the farm, once they had attended the farm, a lot of these women were then being reported missing. Like, they would just vanish, disappear, never heard or seen from again. Now, of course, he doesn't want to believe that this farm that he's working on is up to something devastatingly sinister, but he knows that he doesn't really have any choice but to make a report to the police. So Bill does this with the best of intentions, and the police would take no notice, at least not until 2002. So on February the 6th, 2002, the police, they have a search warrant for the Pickton farm. Now, I know what you're thinking. They'll be there, for the missing girls, all those women who have been reported missing and that Bill had seen come to the farm and then vanish. It must be for that. No, it's not for what you're thinking at all. In fact, the search warrant had been gathered because they believed that the Pickton brothers might have illegal firearms on their farm. Because apparently having illegal firearms is a lot more important to investigate than young women going missing. So Robert, he would be taken into custody, and another search warrant was gathered, and this was on behalf of the British Columbia Missing Women investigation. And it gets to a point where the police, they'll have no option but to pay attention to what's going on at this farm, because at some point they would come across multiple items that belonged to multiple missing women. And yeah, they found one firearm on the property. Now, shockingly, Robert Pickton was released from custody. He was released, okay? Even though missing woman's property is at his farm, he was released. Under surveillance, but he was released. And then finally, on February the 22nd of 2002, Robert Pickton would finally be charged on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Listen, this story seems like it's slowing down, but it's not. We have a lot to get through. So these first 2 counts of first-degree murder that were brought against Robert Pickton was for Serena Abbotsway. She had been reported missing by her foster mother. And the second was Mona Wilson, who had went missing after attending a doctor's appointment. And then on April the 2nd, 3 other additional charges would be brought upon Robert Pickton. This was for Jacqueline McDonnell, Diane Rock and Heather Bottomley. And then on April the 9th, a 6th charge would be brought against him. This was for Andrea Josbury, and this would be shortly followed by a 7th charge for Brenda Wolfe. And honestly, like, the murder counts just don't stop, because on September the 20th, 4 other charges were put against him for the murders of Georgina Papin, Patricia Johnson, Helen Hallmark, and Jennifer Furminger. And yet again, on October the 3rd, another 4 charges would be brought against him. These were for the murders of Heather Chinnock, Tanya Hollick, Sherry Irving, and Inga Hall. So in November of 2003, the excavations of the farm, they were still continuing. It was still ongoing. They were still finding stuff. And all in total, this investigation was said to have cost 70 million Canadian dollars. It's insane. Now, the property, that was fenced off under Lien? I'm not sure. And this was done by the Crown and Right of British Columbia. And believe it or not, it would actually remain this way until like 2023. All of the buildings on the property, they would all be demolished bar one small farm. And forensic analysis was honestly so difficult. I'm surprised it wasn't impossible, because a lot of these bodies, they had just been left to rot and decompose, and others had been eaten by insects or fed to pigs. During the very early excavations of the farm, forensic anthropologists, they had brought in some heavy equipment. Now, this included 2 50-foot flat conveyor belts and also soil sifters, so they could like wade through the dirt and find traces of human remains. Just when you think this story in this case cannot get any more harrowing or any more horrific, it absolutely does. In March of 2004, it was revealed that Robert Pickton, he had been grinding up the remains of his victims. He was then mixing it in with real pork and then having that sold to the public. Yes, it's like Joseph Metheny all over again. He was selling human flesh to the public. Like, the public are unknowingly eating some of Robert Pickton's victims. It is disgusting. Now, anything that Robert thought wasn't fit to be, like minced or turned into sausage, I don't know. Like heads, hands, feet, he would be feeding them to the pigs on the farm. He would grind them up first, of course, and then feed them to the pigs. He also didn't want to give anything that's like heads, hands, or feet, because things like that can easily be identified. On May the 26th, 2005, there would be an additional 12 charges of murder brought against Robert Pickton. Now, of course, because there is 12 names here, I've got them all noted down and I'm just going to read them to you because I don't want to get any names wrong. So he was charged on the murders for Cara Ellis, Andrea Borhaven, Deborah Lynn Jones, Marnie Frey, Tiffany Drew, Kerry Koski, Sarah DeVries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Jardin, Wendy Crawford, Diana Melnick, and Jane Doe. 27 women who have been snuffed out by this monster Robert Pickton. These women, they're somebody's daughters, sisters, friends, and some of them were even mothers. And their families cared about them. Even, here I go getting emotional, but it's always said that serial killers, they target sex workers because they believe that those people aren't loved or cherished enough and that they wouldn't be noticed if they went missing. Most, if not all of these women were reported missing by a loved one or a friend. These are people who were loved and who meant something to someone, and he, this vicious animal, took their lives away. Now, whilst it was confirmed that there was 27 victims, they did continue to find DNA. At one point they had the DNA of 33 women, but not all of these could be identified. Now, throughout the trial and investigation, police would discover just how gruesome and grotesque these murders really were, and they were able to determine that the women had been killed in multiple different ways. The main ones being the woman being handcuffed and then brutally stabbed to death, or the second was they were injected with antifreeze and then just left to die. And once they were dead, Robert would either take them to the rendering plant or he would grind them up and feed them to his pigs. So the police, they conducted a search of Robert's trailer, and in this they found a .22 revolver with a dildo acting as the silencer, like on the barrel. Like he had a dildo silencer. There was also boxes of .357 Magnum handgun ammunition. There was night vision goggles, there was 2 pairs of faux fur lined handcuffs, and there was also a syringe that had like 3 millilitres of some kind of blue liquid inside. During the trial, a former friend of Robert Pickton's by the name of Andrew Bellwood, or some people refer to him as Andrew Williams, like sources are very conflicting on that, but he had actually stayed with Robert for a brief period in 1999. And one night in March of 1999, Robert had said to Andrew, you know, like, do you want to go and pick up some prostitutes? And Andrew had said, like, nah, it's not really his vibe, so he refused. Now, Robert, once Andrew had refused the possibility of going and picking up prostitutes, he said to Andrew, do you want to know what I do with prostitutes? As he said this, he reaches under his mattress and he pulls out handcuffs, a belt and wire. He described turning the sex workers onto their stomach and then proceeding to have sex with them from behind. Now, Andrew said that Robert was still kneeling at this point. He sort of like gestured as if he was stroking a female's hair. Pickton said he would then handcuff these women and say, it's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's going to be over now. Pickton had then said to Andrew that he would then reach under the mattress, he would grab piano wire or a belt, and then he would proceed to strangle these women to death. He would then take their bodies to his slaughterhouse where he would bleed them, gut them, and dismember them. Now listen, although Robert was charged with 27 murders and DNA that proved that he most likely killed even more women, they could only get him on 6 counts of second-degree murder. Second-degree murder and This makes me so angry. Now listen, I get it, to a certain extent. They could only say that 6 counts of murder that was committed, they had concrete evidence for. They didn't have as concrete evidence for the other murders. But to go second-degree just baffles me. The judge then sentenced Robert to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole until after 25 years. Why is the man even getting a possibility of parole at all? I know it's probably not likely that he would have got it, but still, why was he even being granted this? Maybe, I don't know if it's maybe under Canadian law. I know laws work differently, so if that's the case, please let me know in the comments. I could have googled it, but I didn't. And to this very day, it remains unclear just how many victims Robert Pickton really had. Now, he had actually told an undercover police officer in his cell in prison that he had killed 49 women and that he was really disappointed in himself that he couldn't make it to the even 50. What a scumbag. Now, I think this is probably the only, slightly happy bit to this story. On May the 19th of 2024, this year, people, this year, Pickton was attacked by another prisoner at the Port Cartier institution. Now, the prisoner in question is Martin Charest, and first of all, let's give the guy a medal. Now, he had a bit of a history of attacking fellow inmates, and one day, he speared Robert Pickton in the head with a broken broom handle that he had crafted into a spike. Robert Pickton, he would be airlifted, taken to hospital, where he would be put on life support. But ultimately he died from complications due to a heart attack apparently, and he passed away on the 31st of May of this year. As always with these videos, I just want to do, a whole 360 and bring it right back to the people who are important in this case, and that is the victims. Unfortunately, these monsters, they will always remain well known, and a lot of the time the victims are forgotten parts, and that breaks my heart because, as we say every single time in these cases, these people who are dying, these innocent people, are friends, their family, they mean something to someone. And for them to brutally lose their life to a man like this, it's heartbreaking and it's devastating, and we need to make sure that we remember them. So please keep the victims in mind, please keep their families in your hearts, send them love, send them prayers, because they have been through the most horrific thing anyone could ever go through. As usual, I will try and get photos of as many of the victims as I possibly can and put them up on the screen just so we have faces to go with the names and so we know who it is that we're remembering. With this case, there's obviously a lot of victims who remain unknown, so I won't have photos of them because we just don't know who they are, and I don't know if we ever will, which honestly breaks me in two. But my loves, that is the end of another true crime and makeup video. I really hope this one was interesting and eye-opening for you, and I really hope that you just keep these victims in your minds and in your hearts. If you do enjoy my videos, please make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell on, because I post every single Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time, and I am going to start throwing in little surprise videos here and there. I don't know how often, right? I don't know how often. I work full time, like nearly 40 hours a week, and then I do this on the side, which I hope I can make this my career one day, with the help of you guys. I want to just throw in some more content where I can, because I just appreciate every single one of you so much who supports me, and I want to give out as much content as I possibly can. If you do enjoy my videos, please make sure you engage with them in some way. A like, a comment, a share goes such a long way. It lets YouTube know that you enjoy my content and that other people might enjoy it too, and they'll start to push my videos out because they're playing me right now and I'm getting a bit impatient with them. In the description down below you will find my email address if you want to send over your case suggestions, or you can leave them in the comments below. Either way, they get added to my huge list of cases that you guys want me to cover. In the description you will find my Instagram and TikTok handles if you want to give me a follow over there. You'll also find links to every single product that I've used on my face today if there's anything you would like to pick up. But that is it for today's case. Be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and until the next one, I will see you later. Bye!